Best places to live at in the Caribbean and Latin America. So there are quite a few hot spots that people check out for various reasons. I give a little discussion on why the Caribbean and or Latin America would be a place that a lot of people, let's say from United States of America or Europe, think to live at. Well, for one, the cost of living. So let's think about it. The cost of living is much more affordable in many Latin American countries and Caribbean countries in comparison to the United States and Europe. Obviously, let's say in the United States, you have your states that are a little bit more affordable than others, particularly down the southern part of the country. But all in all, many times the countries south of the border in America tend to be a bit more affordable, and the U.S. dollar tends to go a much longer way. So the exchange rate tends to favor the U.S. dollar greatly. Um, Other reasons that people tend to consider moving to Latin America or the Caribbean from Europe or Western societies, Western countries, is the weather. So, in the United States, you have Florida, you have some of the southern states, but you don't really have quite the tropical weather that you would have in the Caribbeans and let's say the Dominican Republic or Cuba or Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, etc., or even some of the Central American countries, Panama, Costa Rica, etc. So the weather is a great factor that plays, rather, it plays a great role in people choosing to move closer to the equator. Also, the people. In many Western literature, Latin America is considered one of the more friendlier and happier places on earth. Number one, I think just a few years ago, if I'm not mistaken, Costa Rica was rated number one as the most happiest people on the planet. So when you're in a hustle and bustle environment, everything's work, 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 and you kind of wanted to retire from that kind of rat race conveyor belt lifestyle, Latin America and many of the Caribbean countries lend to that, facilitating that change in pace. It's much different culture in a lot of these countries. It's more of a laid back culture, like in Costa Rica, it's pure vida, pure life is being more chill. And many of the Caribbean countries, particularly Spanish countries, the saying goes "mañana time." In Jamaica, it's you know uh, later man. So it's a very laid back culture. Nothing's really rushed, but you at the same time you get more of a laid back, carefree, kind of relaxed attitude. People aren't less stiff in many cases, and so that is a very attractive quality to the Latin American countries and also the Caribbean countries as well. Beaches, beaches. You talk about pristine beaches, you'll find the best in the world in the Caribbean, particularly, and then even off the coastline of many Central Latin American countries, and also South American countries. Cartagena, Colombia, the beaches there and surrounding that city. Also, you have Panama and the Bocas del Toro, San Blas. Actually, I've been there. It is amazing. It's a sight like no other. I highly recommend it. You also have Puerto Viejo and the beaches there, Coatzel's Beach, and among others. In Cancun, I mean the water like on the zona, the hotel zone. Uh, you have some of the nicest beaches there. I mean the water is sky blue, royal blue, and it's just an amazing sight. So if you're a beach lover, you'll see some of the best beaches in the world in Latin America and the Caribbeans. Let's see what else. Um, Food. Food is I mean if you um, like hearty dishes, and comfort food. In a lot of cases, depending on what your definition of that is, you'll definitely get that in the Caribbeans. A major staple in many of the dishes is rice, beans, plantains, etc. Some places yuca, and then they have their own variations of meat dishes. So it's like in Jamaica, jerk chicken and rice, beans, plantains. It's a staple there. You have a number of other different dishes all throughout Latin America. Mofongo in Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic. That's like the premier dish in those countries and island nation. Um, you have so many different dishes, and it really caters to the Caribbean culture. Um, so food is another factor that draws people to Latin American countries and Caribbean countries as well. All right, let's see. All right, so we talked about the cost of living, laid back attitude, food, beaches. I mean, phew, that's so many women for men. I mean, the women are beautiful. Um, very, a lot of like within the Latin American countries, a lot of Latin American countries are greatly influenced based off of the Spanish culture or their colonial past from the 1500s on to present. Um, and with that, certain traditional cultures, traditional way of being, very patriarchal in many parts of Latin America. Gender roles is still practiced there. So for a lot of men, this is a turn on. It's definitely many countries. It definitely is a place where the man is the man, the woman is the woman, and so that is something that if you are, for men particularly, if you are a man in your masculine frame, and you enjoy being around women embodying the feminine principle, you'll meet that in abundance, and particularly in Latin America. I know that for sure with many of the Latin American countries I've been to. Um, Also, so that's another point. Um, for the women too. Let's not forget about the women. A lot of women, particularly from Europe, they come down to a lot of Latin American countries um, to to meet the Caribbean men. You always will see that. I saw that a lot in Bocas del Toro in Panama. Um, Also in the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico. And for Americans, that's easy for them to get to Puerto Rico. Is also very affordable. So a lot of women will come down to soak in the sun and soak in the enjoyment for them. I suppose with the men down there. Um, all right, so that's another important point and another important reason people come there. Um, Vitamin D, we talk about the weather is great down there, so especially vitamin D, is good for us all. The sun, ultraviolet rays, and the energy from the sun that is beaming in many of these parts of the world is very beneficial. It raises one energy level, and it's just good for your overall health. So a lot of people want to be close to the equator because of that as well. In Latin America, of course, Latin American countries, many of them, and also uh, Caribbean countries, they're right near the equator. So, and it's a lot of times it's sunny. It's sunny year round. I mean, you have a rainy season, of course, many times, but I mean, you never have any snow. It doesn't get too cold. Um, and that's a pleasure for people that are in the amazing freezing weather of North America, particularly New York and above, or in Europe especially. Uh, let's see. Uh, hmm. I would say those are probably the main you know main reasons that people are interested in Latin America and the Caribbeans. Um, the friendly people, great weather, good food, beaches, cost of living, is very affordable in many of these countries, especially if you had the U.S. dollar backing you. Um, and overall, it's just a good time. It's a good time, relaxed time. Is a great break from the hustle and bustle of the workaholic societies uh, in many of the countries in the Western world. So, definitely a great reason to check out the Latin American countries. I would say my picks that I like the most. I like Costa Rica. I like Panama. Great places, great infrastructure, particularly Panama. Panama is considered one of the premier, and that has a lot of that is historical with the back in the U.S. They use the U.S. dollar there. It's not so that they having the back in the U.S. Developing the infrastructure there, the roads and so forth, et cetera, et cetera. If you look at it in comparison to many other Latin American countries and Caribbean countries, Panama City, for instance, is probably the most well developed out of all of Latin America and the Caribbean and the metropolitan. Although Mexico City might question have a few words to say about that as well as Rio, but I would say Panama is probably one of the more developed cities in that region in the world. Uh, so these are just some of the reasons that people tend to be attracted to Latin America and the Caribbeans. Um, Please feel free to leave your suggestions, comments, and thoughts on what are the reasons that people are attracted to Latin America and the Caribbeans. Till next time, take it easy. Bye.